the real risk in the Middle East is off most people's radars, and that's Turkey. Turkey was behind the fall of Syria. And if you Google Erdogan, you'll see he is the one that wants to resurrect the old Ottoman Empire. When Hamas attacked Israel, he cheered. He's called for all the Arab states to unite behind him. Turkey was the head of the Ottoman Empire. He sees himself as maybe rising to be the next caliph. And U.S. is building a huge embassy, I mean, an absolute fortress there over in Lebanon. In Lebanon has the risk of falling, as does Jordan.
You're watching Capital Cause, and my name is Danny, and today's guest is the legendary Martin Armstrong. Martin, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Let's just dive right in here, Martin. Obviously, there's so much stuff going on. What is most topical for you, however? What's got your eye on the radar screen, so to speak, right now?
I think we're largely, some of the people who are advising Trump are, they're pushing us towards really a very, very serious recession. And mainly this evolves, I think, with the real problem with analysis. The vast majority of people are just domestic people. Oh, look at the Fed. What are they going to do? Whatever. They don't realize there's a world outside the United States. I mean, right now, if we look at this objectively, putting tariffs on, threatening sanctions, more sanctions against Russia, I mean, you're only going to create a depression. Germany has been committing economic suicide. Their economy's actually shrinking. All right. And the problem here is that Germany is the economic power behind Europe. I mean, they went crazy on the COVID restrictions. They did the whole climate change nonsense. Merkel outlawed all, nuclear power. Then they jumped on board with this, the sanctions against Russia. You had Nord Stream 1, which, looks like the Ukrainians and CIA blew up. But Nord Stream 2 is still there. And the Germans have voluntarily turned it off. So, I mean, it's no, really mystery why Schultz's government collapsed one day after Trump was elected. I mean, it's just, I don't know what to say. It's just everything they do, excuse me, is it's just committing economic suicide. The economy has actually shrunk. You've cut off fuel. Climate change, you're on board with NATO. If you look at even the military strength, you take basically UK, France, and Germany combined. All right, they're less than the military power of Turkey. It's completely insane. You have UK, sending off troops to Romania to impress, Putin, and you have Macron threatening to wanting to send in troops directly into Ukraine to start World War III. um, these people, they know the European economy is collapsing. They have a major, major debt crisis. Um, they went to negative interest rates in 2014. And banks must buy government debt and pension funds. All right. Oh, because that's safe. All right. Negative interest rates on bonds. I mean, um, honestly, you're looking at a serious banking crisis in Europe. Um, as rates go up, then those bonds go down in value even more. It's like whatever you could do possibly wrong, they have done. Um, so I'm against Trump with his tariffs. Uh, you're basically just you're taking a man that's dying and throwing gasoline on him. So, um, this is serious because the U.S. economy is the main pillar of the world at this stage, and putting these tariffs on, you're only going to send them into a depression.
Mm.
As they decline, we can't sell stuff to them. I don't care if they put retaliatory tariffs on or not. When you also go into war, people don't spend. They save because they don't know what the outcome is going to be. Or, inflation and things of this nature and rationing and capital controls. All this comes with war. I mean, I'm finishing up a report on Canada. Canada, most people have no idea, defaulted also in 1931. They put in all kinds of, capital controls for just about everything. Moving money, trying to get it out of Canada, going to the United States, forbidden. I mean, all sorts of things. Even during the American Civil War, Abraham Lincoln passed a law that, okay, fine, commerce, maybe you're buying something from somebody in Atlanta, whatever. You were not allowed to pay them. I mean, they just shut down everything. Most people don't realize that even, when the free markets were going against Abraham Lincoln, what did he do? He started shutting down newspapers like Zelensky, but he also shut down the gold market, just closed it. Because gold was going up. In 1864, basically the dollar was collapsing. The British pound went to its record high against the dollar at that point, was $9.97. I mean, so gold was going crazy. He shut down the markets. Okay, fine. You're all saying I'm wrong. Well, you can't trade foreign exchange. You can't trade gold. This is the typical response that you get from governments. I mean, look at World War I. They closed all the stock markets in Europe. So my concern is Europe needs war because they're going to end up defaulting, and they never want to do that without some excuse. You had inflation going up because of the sanctions they put on Russia, and what Putin, basically you had, what was Biden saying? Oh, it's Putin's inflation, not his. They always have to blame somebody else. Putting more sanctions on Russia, what do you're just absolutely crazy?
Yeah, there's this recent truth post from Trump where he basically threatened more sanctions on Russia if they don't make a deal with Zelensky. This comes across as somewhat odd given he said he would end the war within 24 hours during his campaign. What do you make of that post? If you've been watching my channel for a long time, then you know we talk a lot about protecting your wealth in uncertain times. And with everything happening in this day and age in the markets, bank failures, inflation, geopolitical instability, and more, you need a solid plan to safeguard your wealth and your assets. Here's where ITM Trading comes in. They specialize in strategic gold and silver acquisitions, helping people just like you build real, tangible wealth outside of the system. Their team of experts doesn't just sell metals, they create custom wealth protection plans and strategies tailored to your financial goals. Their track record speaks for itself. Just look at their research and client success stories and look at all these reviews here on Google. Don't wait until it's too late. Give ITM Trading a call today or book a strategy session using the link in the description box or the pinned comments down below. I've personally looked at their strategies and let me tell you, they know their stuff. If you're serious about real financial security, ITM Trading is the team you want on your side. Check them out.
I'm a little skeptical, mainly because I've had contact with Mark Rubio. In my opinion, he is a neocon.
Yep.
It was talking about war and all this other kind of stuff, and I said, "Hey, it's this is out of line." So I was very disappointed when he chose him for Secretary of State. I'm not so sure he's going to be different than Blinken. And they're not. I don't know. I know a number of these neocons. All I can say is maybe from the 50s when they had to hide underneath the desks in school or something, that they got psychologically damaged. I don't know. I mean, when Khrushchev was there and said, okay, we will bury you, that was communism against capitalism. Okay, we got our backs up. I understood. They know, right, fine. We hated Russia, the Cuban Missile Crisis, etc. But communism fell. Russia's no longer, a communist country trying to spread it to the rest of the world. They're not interested in that. When Yeltsin turned it to Putin, he soared in Russia. He was one of the most popular presidents ever. Why? Because the alternative was you go back to communism, which he was not a communist, and he wasn't an oligarch. All right. So it was like the best, they could possibly hope for. And that's why his approval rating was over 70%. It was just, you have to look at it from their perspective. Everybody that I know, even in Eastern Europe, nobody wants to go back to communism. But we have not changed the rhetoric. This nonsense, if Ukraine falls, Russia will take the rest of Europe. I mean, come on. They're not interested in that. The Russian people aren't interested in that. The American people aren't interested in going over and occupying Russia. Everybody, the average person on both sides, we just want to take care of our family and get along with life. That's it. Wars are created by the elite. Go kill this guy, and they just fill their pockets with money. That's about it. I mean, look at Vietnam. I mean, it's all come out now. I mean, LBJ lied to the public. He even said they had no idea that they were shooting at whales that night. We were never attacked. And Robert McNamara, you can look on YouTube before he died. He did a video and he's to apologize. Some 58,000 Americans died. And he said, we were wrong. We thought Russia was involved. They were not. That's nice. It's always Russia, Russia, Russia. It's that's why I say I think these people just, when communism fell, I think they were just mad that they didn't get to shoot anybody. You know, after spending decades, oh, they're the enemy, and okay, then all of a sudden your enemy's not there anymore. Um, so I can tell you, I was in D.C. Back when Reagan came in, and Gorbachev had taken power and had made statements like he wanted to, have peace, etc. And Reagan wanted to go meet him. And the neocons, they couldn't say he was still a communist because he wasn't. They said the excuse was, and I can tell you directly, that they said you can never trust a Russian.
Mm.
So it turned from communism to just racism, I guess.
Right.
Um, but look at the landscape. Not one European leader is interested in even negotiating possibly peace. It's just you're willing to blow up Europe for what?
Just so you have a
I don't
finger,
know.
just so you can point the blame at someone else for your troubles with your economic troubles.
Yeah, look, most people don't realize, but when they created the EU, uh, I mean, I helped, Margaret Thatcher, keeping the pound out of the euro. And she understood and said, this is going to be a disaster. When they were creating the euro, they came to me. I said, okay, fine. This is how you create a currency. And they were saying, oh, everybody will pay the same interest rate like in Europe. And we'll be able to defeat the dollar because our GDP will be bigger. I mean, this was all the propaganda. And I said, that's very nice. None of this is going to work. You have to consolidate the debt if you want to compete with the dollar. And Robert Kohl of Germany, uh, before he died, and you can Google this one up too, he admitted he acted like a dictator.
Mm.
The German people were never allowed to vote to join the euro. He said if he put it to a vote, he would have lost 7-3. So he acted like a dictator, unilaterally took Germany into the euro. And his criteria was you can't consolidate the debt because the Germans wouldn't want to be seen as paying off the debt for Greece. And I warned him, I said, you do this, this is not going to work. As a trader, you were bullish Germany, bearish on Italian. You bought, the Deutschmark, you sold the lira. All you did was you transferred it to the bond market.
Yep.
Buy the bonds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all kinds of spreads are going on. So nothing changed. You just moved it from currency to the bond market. That's all you did.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, if I'm going to pick up the phone and say, buy me $10 billion of what? Okay, I still have to make the same decision. Do I want to be in Germany? Do I want to be in France? Do I want to be in Italy? There is no single European investment like that. So I said, you're never going to compete with the dollar. I just call up, say, okay, fine, buy me $10 billion of treasury. That's it. Done.
Yeah.
I mean, we got 50 states. They all have different, credit ratings, and they all have to compete. That's what Europe has become. Nothing different.
You can see their power completely fade away. I don't know. I'm sure you're keeping up with the latest on Davos as we speak right now. And from what I've seen, I mean, they're talking to a half-empty arena or half-empty or auditorium, whatever you want to call it. And just the other day, they had a big panel and they were discussing the recent Trump win. And they basically admitted that they lost and Trump won. Is Davos, Brussels, the EU admitting their defeat? I mean, is this just a positive sign, or do they become, I guess, do they end up showing their fangs like a cornered Wolverine at this moment?
No, I think that's probably the latter. I've never seen a government simply surrender like that. Oh, okay, you were right, we were wrong. I don't think that's just going to happen. I really don't. Uh, you have to understand when they created the EU, Schwab had his hand in it. All right. Look at it. It's anti-democratic. All right. Nobody can vote for the head of Europe. They don't stand for election. They're appointed by the heads of the different states. Next, you have the European Commission that makes all the laws that are dictatorial to everybody else. Nobody stands for election.
Mm-hmm.
All right. There is no way a European has the ability to vote to get out. It's kind of like almost communism. You vote your way in, but you got to shoot your way out. It's just not. Basically, I mean, Schwab actually does have a bust of Lenin on his bookshelf in his office.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The I would say that you had the three Greek philosophers, Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates, and they were all against democracy. Why? Because they felt the people were too stupid, basically, to vote. So that's what Marx kind of picked up on, and it's been hanging in on low fruit trees for people to pick off for a long time.
How do you reconcile their hate for communists in Russia, but they themselves being communist adjacent by being technocrats and having a bust of Lenin?
Because they don't. Lenin was different than Stalin.
Mm.
All right. If you really look at what Lenin did, yes, communism, but it was modeled on the United States, that it would be a confederation. And he argued that each republic should retain its sovereignty like the United States. They assume, many people assume, that Stalin poisoned Lenin and his wife.
Mm.
Lenin had even written a letter, "Do not let Stalin succeed me." All right, Stalin did. What did he do? He grabbed all the power to Moscow. No, you don't have independent sovereignty, anything else. So he was more of a real dictator type thing. So that's the difference between Lenin and Stalin. So they seem to be trying to cut the baby in half, that the people are too stupid to vote. So we, the elite, have to show society where to go. But we're not communist. We're not like Lenin. I mean, we're more like Lenin. We're not like Stalin. It's I don't know. There are no movie, mirrors in Washington or Brussels. They never look at themselves. They end up at the same level, the same area, because centralized government historically always fails. Why? Take Camilla in abortion, for example. There was some guy that, said, oh, God and whatever. And she said, oh, you're at the wrong rally. Basically, her position was, no, I get in and this is it for abortion. And telling the Bible states, we don't care about your religion, take it and stuff it. That's not civilization. All right. That's why centralized governments always fail. They think they have the power to dictate, and everybody must accept the same thing. And then they couch it in, oh, equality, and all this other bullshit, really. We are equal in rights, not in talent. Like I said, I don't think you want to pay me $30 million a year to throw a football, you know? But this is reality. Yes, we're all equal in rights, but we're not equal in talent. Um, in communism, human individuality didn't exist. All right. Okay, we got a job opening to clear, here's a broom, go do that. Not, there was no individual, gee, what would you like to do in life? And none of that. That's why communism failed. All right. It's Stalin was even teaching kids. I went behind the Berlin Wall. So what I'm speaking about is not speculation. I saw it myself. They were telling kids, your parents are not your real parents. The state is. And if they say anything against the state, you are to report them. You had like California's moving in the same direction. Oh, if a parent doesn't allow the child to maybe even investigate transgender, that's child abuse. And under the law, they could take the children away from the parent. What is this? The state was in California was directly interfering in the parental relationship. This is what they do. It's always more and more power. They never give anything back. Once they have it, that's it. I was arguing back in the 80s that we should merge the SEC and CFTC. I said, everybody else has one regulatory body. We have two. And if I obey the laws of the SEC, I go to jail with the CFTC. And I was told, no, we can't do that because we'd have to lay off 50,000 people. So it's got nothing to do with what's right, what's wrong. And I said, you're going to force everybody offshore. That became the hedge fund industry. Mm-hmm. You wanted me to make the decision for you. Should I be in bonds, stocks, commodities, gold, whatever? I can make that decision. As a domestic hedge fund or domestic fund manager, I could not. All right. I was offered $60 billion to manage in equities. I turned it down. Why? Because legally, I could only hedge up to 17%. If I went beyond that, now I'm also a commodity fund. I said, no, it would ruin my decision, my reputation. If I can't hedge and the market's going down and I can't sell, and then I'm basically the terrible fund manager. That's why you ended up Soros and the rest of them. And everybody moved offshore because then you could make those decisions. Should I go in currency, gold? What am I going to do? You make those decisions. That's what a real hedge fund manager did. So domestically, you have to make the decision yourself. Because the bond guy is going to say this is the best fund. Stock guy is going to say this is best. The gold fund. You have to have the same expertise. Mm-hmm. So it's just crazy.
Definitely. Let's return back to the topic of geopolitics. Do you see? Let's for lack of a better term, give Trump a chance when it comes to his Ukraine-Russia negotiations. But do you see him shifting away from the east, the west-east axis, to the north-south axis? In other words, he doesn't really care too much about what happens in Ukraine or the Middle East or in Taiwan. It seems like his focus is to the north-south, i.e. Canada, Mexico, Greenland, Panama. and potentially other portions of South America. And if that is the case, can he afford to have any sort of energy directed towards the East? What's your take on Trump's kind of wanting to build out Fortress America in the Western Hemisphere? Because I mean, I don't know if you've said it, but plenty of other analysts that I've listened to are kind of forecasting the cyclical war cycle crescendoing the late 2020s, early 2030s. And if that's the case, could Trump be building a Fortress America across the Western Hemisphere?
I don't think that's really his objective there. um, when back in the 60s, when I was involved in computer um, engineering, etc., I wasn't allowed to talk about it back then, but RCA had all the government contracts. They were the biggest, really, in computers at the time. Um, they decided to sell their computer division when to Univac and IBM, but they retained the government contracts. So the married guys were getting Hawaii, London, Paris. I was not married. I was offered Thule, Greenland, Guam, and Vietnam. Right. Most people didn't know, but what was up at Thule, Greenland? That's NORAD. It was all top secret back then. That protects the United States looking over the top of the globe. Because if Russia's going to send any kind of a missile, it's going to come over the top. It's not going to go across the Atlantic and in. That would be more of a submarine type thing. It's like going around your belly versus your chest. It's a shorter distance over the North Pole from Russia to America that way. That's what NORAD was about. That's what Greenland was all about. And that's why maybe everybody's just heard about this because of Trump, but this has been something argued in Washington for quite some time for national security, purposes that we should control Greenland. But that's really what that's for. I think the Canada being the 51st state thing was just basically a shot across the bow because of Trudeau and his nonsense up there. I don't think he's serious about that, and I certainly wouldn't want to take in Canada, honestly. And I would be more inclined to take up their offer. Let's swap. I'll give you California, Oregon, and Washington, and maybe even throw in New York City. All right, and give us Alberta and BC. But the Panama Canal, that I understand. We paid for everything. China's really kind of using it a lot now. And Jimmy Carter just simply gave it to him. That was it. I'm not sure that was even legal without congressional approval, but these people tend to do a lot without, that I would say violates the Constitution quite often. I mean, even Biden's pardons, absolutely ridiculous. You can look at the Supreme Court decision. I posted about it. Supreme Court clearly stated a pardon is the equivalent of pleading guilty, and you basically are accepting it is like a plea of guilty, period. For him to say he's pardoning his family, but they didn't do anything wrong. Sorry, that's amnesty, all right, which he doesn't have the power to grant, only pardons. So it's like a hybrid, and you're pardoning the January 6 people and your whole family. This is, sorry, you don't have the power to do that. So I would say that Trump is maybe, hopefully, giving him the benefit of the doubt that perhaps with publicly putting that out is more of maybe a negotiating standpoint with Putin. I don't think a world leader would do such a thing publicly rather than privately. So maybe that's the public statement, and the private one is something different. I can say that Putin has shown tremendous restraint, tremendous. Knowing that Trump coming in changes the landscape, and maybe all this nonsense. I mean, Zelensky should be thrown out of office, if not dragged out. I speak to a lot of Ukrainians, and to quote them, if he basically was on fire, they wouldn't urinate on him until he was dead. Mainly because there was a peace deal. And then Boris Johnson hopped on the plane and said, no, you're not allowed to have peace. We want war. Over 1 million Ukrainians have died since then. What are you fighting for? Is nonsense that, invading Russia. Why? You're not defending the Donbass anymore. All right. It's because he was told to go invade Russia. Maybe then Putin would attack something in NATO and they could declare, oh, see, he's the aggressor. And that's why I say Putin knows the game. He knows what they're trying to get him to do. And if he does that, we're into World War III. Simple as that. What the Europeans are trying to do is get him to attack anything in NATO so they can invoke Article 5, and now U.S., you have to send troops in. The last time Article 5 was invoked, the U.S. did it over 9/11 to justify going in and attacking Iraq, which actually had nothing to do with 9/11 or weapons of mass destruction or anything other. Every other lie that Dick Cheney made up.
What do you think was the reason? What do you think was the reason behind that hard-nosed post? However, I mean, and plus, what is there to sanction from Russia still? I mean, they've pretty much sanctioned the entire country. Do you think Russia cares whether or not the U.S. adds another irrelevant, arbitrary sanction and a few tariffs here and there?
Look, these sanctions against Russia are absolutely brain dead. They are destroying the European economy completely. You just had Zelensky cutting off the gas to, Slovenia. But then you want them to give you money. This is what created the BRICS. If you go back to 2014 when Russia went into Crimea, Obama went to SWIFT and said he wanted them to be removed. And SWIFT said, no, you're not going to turn the world financial system into a weapon. So what did they do? They replaced the head of SWIFT in 2019. Oh, okay. What do you want me to do this time? So SWIFT has basically destroyed the world economy. There is no global economy anymore. Once you put in these sanctions against Russia, that's what created BRICS. All of a sudden, all these other countries began to realize, hey, if we don't do what Washington directs us to do by dictatorial power, we are removed from SWIFT. Look, this whole nonsense started with Christine Lagarde when she was the head of the IMF. She's the one that started this stuff, and she was friends with Obama, which is why he tried it. Uh, she threatened all the tax havens. You turn over everybody that has an account there, or we're going to remove you from SWIFT and you can't get any money at all. She even did threaten the Vatican. That's where all this nonsense started from. And for her, it was, oh, we got to get those people that all these billionaires and got money in these tax havens and not paying tax. We need that money. And this is basically what it is. So what you've done is you've divided the world economy. China, you have Blinken. These people really are idiots. They only look at a myopic issue. All right. You have Blinken threatening China. Okay, if you help Russia, we'll put sanctions on you. Well, China owned more than 10% of the U.S. national debt. They started selling. They created chips. All right. You idiot. All right. In order for you to wage war, you need somebody buying your debt.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling the rest of the world, you do as I say. Well, okay, well, I'm not going to buy your debt. You go into World War III, whatever debt China has, you think the U.S. will pay it? Absolutely no way. Oh, we can't transfer interest to them to buy weapons to attack us. That's your excuse. So they will default. I mean, I'm not, even making speculation. This is history. It's just simply the way it goes. And then they put in all kinds of capital controls to stop money from moving. There are major capital outflows ahead of FDR, confiscating gold. The night before, the election, the rumor was out that he was going to do that. And he addressed the nation, oh, that's absurd. I would never do such a thing. That's just political rhetoric. He won the election, and immediately that's what he did. They lie about everything.
Given what you've seen from Trump so far, what are you forecasting out for him? What do you anticipate being the first, second, and nth order effects of his presidency?
Well, I think the U.S. economy will certainly bounce to some degree into 26. After that, it does not look good going down into 28. Mainly because you're looking at war. As I said, Europe economy is, and the Europeans have got to wake up and drag these world leaders out of their office by their hair, if they have any. Because they're not going to change their policy. They're not going to admit, oh, gee, I guess I was wrong. Not going to happen. As
Does Trump get out of NATO? Does he get out of NATO?
I hope he does. I think he certainly was in that direction before, and he's probably in talks of doing it now. What I can tell you, what's going on in Europe, is you have Macron saying he wants to send in troops into Ukraine. Russia he wants war with Russia. Why? Russia is the richest country in the world from a natural resource perspective. And they have all told themselves, if they conquer Russia, all this wealth will solve their problems. You can Google, you had Lindsey Graham, and I was shocked. He was on, I think it was Face the Nation,
Hmm.
and he actually said the truth for once. He said there was 10 to 12 trillion dollars worth of natural resources under Crimea. And he actually said on TV, we cannot allow Russia and China to have that. So, in other words, we're not fighting for democracy or all this other nonsense that they put up. It's assets again, like oil wells in Iraq. It's a gas field that's underneath Crimea that they know about. You had a minister of Estonia coming out and saying Russia's too big and needs to be carved up. How would people think if Putin said the United States is too big and should be carved up? You know,
It won't go for a while.
No, it wouldn't. You know, it's but this is what. Look, I think they think a third time is going to be a charm. Hitler tried, Napoleon tried. I guess they think, well, maybe the third time we'll be able to get it. Most people don't realize, but in 1917, the time of the revolution, Russia had the world's largest gold reserves of anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody in the administration hid it. And there's been this quest to find it, like the, Knights Templar lost treasure or whatever. There've been rumors that it was buried in a forest, others that it was dropped at the bottom of a very deep lake, but they didn't want the communists to get their hands on the gold. So it's never been found. So it's, probably would make a good, lost treasure movie or something, but so Russia is definitely the richest country in the world from a natural resource perspective. The Greens in Germany, they want war because they want to save the planet. We have to destroy Russia's ability to sell energy around the world. I mean, this is the bullshit that I've heard. Even directly. All right. So, I mean, I'm not speculating on this stuff. It's,
but do they believe it?
You can't.
Do they believe their own BS?
They seem to. I think they're just indoctrinated into this stuff. It makes no sense. Look, you even had a girl take tomato soup and throw it on the Mona Lisa. Oh, because it's an oil painting. Honey, that's not crude oil. It's linseed oil. I mean, they're not that smart. What do you want me to say? They're just not that smart. Oil, oh my God, Oh, let me get an oil massage. Oh, you're hurting the planet, It's, I don't know.
But it seems like that type of thinking. It seems like that type of thinking has pretty much been dispensed with. Normal people, at least here in the United States, have had enough of this. I mean, you see this formally achieved through the election of Trump, and you don't really see much pushback anymore with Trump. It's not like it was in 2016 or 2017 or during the first Trump term.
And this is a rising trend globally. In Germany, you're seeing the AfD is rising. Oh, far right. Anybody that's not far left is far right. It's just, they're in the middle of the road, really. But it's the same thing you're seeing. There is pushback on all this stuff because it is destroying the economy. So it's not just here. I mean, that's why I say you saw the German government fall one day after Trump was elected. This is just the way it is. Cyclically, we're looking at the left simply went too far, and on all this stuff from climate change. I mean, you can Google transgender. What percentage of the population is transgender? You're talking about like less than 4%, 2 or 3%, something like that. Yet they made this such a big issue. You would think that like 50% of the country's that way or something, you know? I mean, most people never even heard of it before they started that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's shift over to some other potential hotspots. Do you think there's a real risk of a war with Iran in much the same way there could be a war with Russia?
probably less.
Mm,
The real risk in the Middle East is off most people's radars, and that's Turkey.
mm,
Turkey was behind the fall of Syria. And if you Google Erdogan, you'll see he is the one that wants to resurrect the old Ottoman Empire. When Hamas attacked Israel, he cheered. He's called for all the Arab states to unite behind him. Turkey was the head of the Ottoman Empire. He sees himself as maybe rising to be the next caliph. And U.S. is building a huge embassy. I mean, an absolute fortress there over in Lebanon. In Lebanon has the risk of falling, as does Jordan. And it's really all about, you know, Turkey is the one that wants to really conquer the whole Middle East area. Israel used to be part of the Ottoman Empire. So I think that's more of a risk than Iran. Iran is more on the religious side. I don't think that they have the same visions of conquering all of the Middle East like Erdogan does. To them, it's more of a opposing, you know, the Jews, for more on a religious type thing.
How do you see Turkey's NATO status playing into all of this, especially in the north of Syria, where you've got U.S.-backed Kurds seemingly going into combat against the Turkish-backed forces?
Yeah, I mean that's the whole problem. It's Turkey being in NATO is kind of like an oxymoron. I mean, one of their arch enemies is Greece. And Greece just got maybe a half a dozen F-35s or something, and they said, "Oh, now we can attack." And you can Google this. They actually publicly said, "Now we can do a sneak attack on Turkey." It's another NATO country. You know what's going on here. But the hatred between Greece and Turkey go back to Alexander the Great.
Mm.
I mean, this is thousands of years. You know, you're not going to change this stuff. It's not a negotiation. You can't. I don't see like a lasting peace in between Iran and Israel either. I mean, these are things that just are deeply rooted. For those that haven't been to the Middle East, it's completely different. We carved up the area and made these countries and put in dictators. We did that. All right. So in Syria, as you said, you got the Kurds, it's tribes. They see themselves as tribes first. All right. Druze, you know, you get Sunni, Shiite. These are religious differences. All right. They don't say, yes, we're all Syrian. It's like, no, get that guy, get this. The whole area is that way. The Palestinians, there was a war, all right, an Arabian war. The Saudis won. That's why it's called Saudi Arabia. All right. The loser was the Hashemites. Where did they go? Jordan. Jordan was supposed to be for Palestine. So the head of Jordan, the king, he married a Palestinian to try and merge the two tribes. Didn't really work, but nevertheless, you have to look at the Middle East. It's tribal. Um,
So
that's a problem.
when you say Lebanon and Jordan could be the next two countries to fall, what does that look like? Is that like another Syria, or what do you? Can you provide a little bit
Pretty
more detail
much,
on that?
because look, Hezbollah is not all of Lebanon. Okay, they are a group within there that have captured the headlines. They have brought war to the region. The rest of the people in Lebanon are against them. That's what I mean. It's all tribal. It's not one size fits all. So you're looking at both them and Lebanon and Jordan are not stable countries per se. Um, Lebanon's been really invaded by Hezbollah. And it's like Ukraine is our Hezbollah. They take our orders from us. Hezbollah basically takes its orders from Iran. So, like I say, it's not as clear cut as a lot of people think.
Do you see Iran somewhat distancing themselves from Hezbollah and Hamas? There was a recent interview with the vice president of Iran over at the World Economic Forum, and he basically just threw the resistance axis under the bus. Do you see Iran kind of trying to distance themselves away in order to normalize relations with the West, at least with this reformist regime with Pezeshkian and Zarif?
Yes, that's why I say I don't see them as the biggest threat. Turkey's more. They don't have the agenda to conquer all of the Middle East. And if they, I think they're trying to basically back down because they know that you have a bunch of neocons here. I believe it has been leaked out. The real agenda going into Iraq was that they thought that they could take Iraq within a matter of a week. And the plan was to go from there directly into Tehran and to take out Iran at the same time. They got bogged down in Iraq and never made it to part two. But you had generals out there, and that was the agenda. I believe that has been leaked out. So I think that basically has told Iran, hey, is this really the direction you want to go? Because you're not going to survive.
What's the point of this huge embassy they're building in Lebanon? What does this foretell?
I think it's really to protect Israel. I mean, it's the biggest embassy and it's a fortress. It's an absolute fortress. There's nothing in the entire State Department that even comes close to it. So it seems to be a major fortress, all concrete, withstand pretty much anything. And I think it's largely anticipating the problems, not so much just from Iran. Maybe it began that way, but I think it's also focused on Turkey.
I see. And with Turkey, do you Well, how does this affect their relationship with Israel? I mean, they have don't they send their oil to Israel? Don't they have these strategic economic ties with Israel? I mean, how adversarial could they be, though?
Look, he's Erdogan is it's like, okay, fine, just look at Germany. They cut off their own nose to spite their face.
Mm.
I mean, um, when it comes to his dream of resurrecting the old Ottoman Empire, I mean, he's come out point blank. I mean, you can probably Google it and find many statements with it. We should all rise up against Israel, join together against Israel. I mean, this is what he preaches all the time.
Mm.
So he might be having some economic ties, but that can be cut off in an instant.
Well, anything else you want to talk about here, Martin? I think we've covered pretty much every hot topic there is to cover, seemingly. Anything else you want to talk about that we didn't get to?
Um, I think from an economic standpoint, my concern with Trump is this whole thing about currency value, saying he wants to see the dollar lower. I mean, I've been probably the leading FX advisor since the 70s. So I got called into just about every one of these crises. When they were forming G5, I was called in. I warned them, do not do this. They were proposing to lower the dollar by 40%. And I said, if you do this, you're going to cause a crash, which ended up being the 87 crash. And they go, oh, well, why? I said, because you sold a third of the national debt to Japan. You're now going to say you're going to lower the dollar by 40% for trade. Well, everybody that bought any U.S. assets are going to sell. They're going to lose money. Really? I mean, they don't understand this stuff. It's amazing how the stupidity in government that I encounter. 1997, you can look on our site. I wrote to Robert Rubin. Same thing. Oh, Japan, we got to lower the dollar, blah, blah, blah. I wrote to him. I said, hey, look, I was called in on the 87 crash. You keep this up and you're going to cause a crash. Oh, well, we're not into that, blah, blah, blah. That was the 1997 Asian currency crisis a few weeks later. I'm just sick and tired of all this stuff. I was called in. I met with the Swiss central bank. I warned them the peg is going to break. Oh, well, we think we can hold it. I said, that's very nice. Okay. I think history's on my side. Not a single country has been able to hold this. Peg broke. I was advising Margaret Thatcher, kept the pound out of the euro. They staged a coup because they wanted to go into the euro. So John Major took the euro. And this is what politicians do. He wanted to make it look strong. So he overvalued it and put it into the ERM, the European rate mechanism, which was the prelude to the euro. All right. Soros and everybody else, that's how they made money. They started shorting it. I then get called. Why? Because I'm the one that was advising Thatcher, and said, don't do this. Okay, I said, look, you overvalued the pound. You're going to have to devalue the pound. This is what I was told. All right. Oh, well, John Major can't say that because when he ran for election, he promised not to devalue the pound. So how do you get out of this? So I wrote the paragraph for him. We're going to allow the pound to float to seek its own level. Mm. Oh, brilliant. Because he didn't do it. The market did it. You see, I mean, it's all wordsmithing. You have to deal with these politicians. I've dealt with them for so long. I understand what the issue is. It's the word. Right? Change the word and it's okay. It's the same thing. All right. So, I mean, I'm concerned that Trump is going down that same stupid road. Tariffs, um, lower the value of the dollar so we can sell more overseas. Not going to work. Sorry. What you're going to do is you're going to cause a crash. You lower the value of the dollar. Then everybody that bought U.S. assets, shares, real estate, whatever, they're going to lose money. So then they sell. Then you create a bear market. Hello. How many times do I have to get, called in by governments to do this? All the time. I'm sick of it. It's one thing if you say, okay, fine, don't do this again. And they listen. I've been called into these things. I can't tell you how many times. The first one I got called into was the Franklin National Bank failure in 1974. It was a 10% move because that's when the Bretton Woods broke in 71. The bank went down for a 10% move in the Italian lira. You know about this stuff. Could you come take a look at this? That's what it brought it down. So after that, every financial crisis, get the guy that did that one. So I've been in the middle of every one of these things. It's just 97 Asian currency crisis. I was even called in by the Bank of China. I've met probably more central banks than I think anybody in history, but it's always the same thing.
They don't learn.
No, I mean, they're always going to make decisions in their own self-interest.
So you think it's just human nature? It's just human nature looking out for their own self-interest, and they make the same mistakes.
I think so. Look, individually, you learn. Okay, I did that, bought the high. Okay, I'm not going to do that again. Collectively, as a society, we don't have that ability. That's what I've concluded. We don't learn from our mistakes. And I don't know who's going to take this role from me after I'm gone. I mean, because they're still going to make the same mistakes. I mean, all the time. I've been doing this for 40 some years and I've seen no change. And when Trump is saying this, I'm going, oh shit, here we go again.
Well, they start believing their own BS. They start drinking their own Kool-Aid in a way.
They don't get it. They really don't get it. Like I said, Blinken threatening China. So China sells 53 billion of U.S. debt the first quarter. Well, why? Because you threatened them, you idiot. I mean, I don't know. There's just no comprehension of how the world economy really works. They think that they vote for me and I'll lower inflation or raise, lower unemployment. You cannot do that. You can't shift the direction of your economy if the entire world is against you. You're in the middle of a Great Depression. Sorry, you're not going to create a boom. All right, we're all connected. This is what goes on. I mean, you had, the first G4 was 1927. Capital was fleeing to America, taking place in the auto booms going into 29, and Europe was in trouble. So they convinced the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates in 1927. It's the first G4 meeting. They did. What happened? The markets looked at it. They said, oh, that proves Europe's in trouble. Get the hell out. The 87 crash. All right. You had the Plaza Accord. I warned them not to do it. They stood up and said, we want the dollar 40% lower. Then you have, after that, you basically have the Louvre Accord. I think it was in like February of 87. Then they all got together in Paris. Okay, the dollar went down enough. All right. So we think that's enough. When the dollar started making lower lows, that's what caused the panic. Oh, central banks can't control it. Sell. When you make these kind of positions and then you have egg on your face, you are confirming to the free markets that you don't have the power you pretend to have.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna do a little dot connecting here, Martin, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Have you heard of this Project Stargate initiative, where they want to funnel $500 billion into AI research? Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
What are the odds that this is kind of a way to, I mean, are they trying to better understand the markets through AI? Is that like their, is that, could that be a big component to it? And then what are your general thoughts on that initiative?
No, um, the main reason that we have really the only functional AI system on markets is because you're not going to create an AI system and hope it learns how to trade. All right. Trading is something different. It's a nuance, you know, like driving. Okay, you're driving and a guy just makes a slight move, looks like he's going to come out in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, he doesn't, but he was thinking about it, so there's a slight little move. All right, that's what trading's about. It's sometimes part of a gut feeling, but you have to know who you're trading against. What are they doing? What's their thing? What are they thinking today? So it's more of a nuance that, for example, I mean, how many times we heard, okay, a good economic came out, number, and the market still went down. Oh, well, it wasn't good enough. How do we know what's good enough and what's not? So I'm not so sure that they're going to be able to create an AI that learns how to actually trade, because it takes more on an international level rather than domestic. Mm-hmm. But look, the open AI really sparked and made people think that this AI is suddenly attainable. But there are limits to it. I mean, Big Blue created, and they promised, AI was going to cure cancer, and they threw it all the data. Sorry, it didn't work. That's what I mean. You need expertise sometimes in certain areas. And you can't expect a computer to simply get expertise out of nowhere. I mean, that's movie stuff, create an AI system like, Terminator. Oh, suddenly I don't like humans. I think I'll kill them all, but spending this kind of money on AI is typical. They don't really know what they're doing. It sounds great. Oh, that will maybe solve a lot of problems. Even if it did, they're not going to follow it. I'm telling you. Mm-hmm. That would be, okay, fine. You should merge the CFTC and SEC. I'd have to lay off 50,000 people. I don't want to do that. Would they even follow that advice, even assuming it was correct? I after 40 years of dealing with these people, I don't think so.
Martin, what is the point of these Trump meme coins that have come out? You've got the Trump coin, the Melania coin. I think you have a Barron coin as well. I mean, this just seems like a giant rug pull before he was inaugurated. What do you make of
I
this?
don't, I think bad idea. I think he should have, uh, to me, it taints the whole issue with like Biden Family Inc., uh, look, cryptocurrency, I don't know what he's smoking. Oh, create a Bitcoin reserve. I mean, get out of here. Come on. This stuff is not a reserve at all. It's not a currency. In order for a currency to exist, it must be accepted everywhere. First of all, let's get real here. Bitcoin could never replace the dollar. Why? You would have permanent deflation. It would be the Great Depression all over again. Why? Because basically the money supply must increase with the population growth. All right. If there's $20 in the money supply and there's only 20 people, we all can have one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now there's 40 people, but there's still only $20. What happens? Now we're down to 50 cents. It becomes deflationary. That's what the Great Depression was about. The Fed did not increase the money supply because they were afraid of inflation. So they contracted it. All right. It was one of the criticisms that Milton Friedman had about it. They didn't expand the money supply. And he was correct. You can also go online and you can go on eBay. Over 200 cities issued their own currency during the Great Depression. Why? Because there wasn't enough cash. They couldn't pay employees, couldn't hire employees, couldn't pay the bills.
And I believe they also burned down farmland to create inflation, didn't they? Through the supply side. There you go.
I mean, look, the money, inflation is, we're dealing with false narratives that come from mainly from the German hyperinflation. Oh, it was because they printed money. No, sorry, completely wrong. All right, they printed money as the cause, as a reaction to it. Germany in December 1922, and you can buy these bonds on eBay, they confiscated 10% of everybody's assets in the bank. Okay. Now they just took 10% of your bank account. What are you going to do? Do you leave it there for them to do it again?
Nope. I'm going to go and buy a bunch of tangible assets.
And they were converting it to French francs, Swiss francs, everything they could. The hyperinflation comes the next year. The money fled. You had the socialists were rising. All right. The Weimar Republic had even gone as far as in what they wanted. They overthrew the government, and they were actually asking Russia to come take them. They wanted to join the miracle of Marxism. So if you had any real money and you just saw what they did in Russia, and this is what they're asking you to do in Germany, you got the hell out of there quick. So the printing of the money wasn't the hyperinflation. That was the result of everybody fleeing.
Right.
All right. It's the cart before the horse. So it's not the increase in the money supply that creates inflation. All right. It's the collapse in confidence in government. That's why you had this, this new modern monetary theory. Oh, the Fed increased the money supply, but there's no inflation. All right. First of all, they don't even understand what they're talking about. The Fed was just basically doing a swap, taking in 30-year bonds, and China reduced its maturities from and brought it down to 5 years. I warned them. I said, that's very nice. You're buying in all these 30-year bonds. Who are you buying them from? They didn't know. The
Hmm.
money was going out of the country. So it didn't stimulate the economy, didn't do anything, didn't create inflation. So then you have these academics, oh, see, we can increase the money supply and it's not inflationary because the money left the country, you idiot. You know, it's, I, I get very frustrated because people don't, they're confined to their domestic purview of what's taking place. You know, open up, open your mind. Look, we're all connected. We
I
were
want to get your
bankrupt in 1896. It was World War One and Two that brought all the money here. That's what made the U.S. the reserve currency of the world. Hello. If it wasn't for World War One and Two, we'd still be a bunch of farmers.
if we get into a big world war with the US involved, does a similar thing happen to another country, i.e. the capital just flees there? And then if so, what country would you bet on that being?
Our computer shows it will be China.
Interesting.
China will replace the United States after 2032. Um, Look, this is why the dollar is strong and Trump doesn't get it. The more war and sanctions you want to thread on Russia, the more they beat the war drums over there, the more capital that's going to come here. All right. Same as World War One, World War Two. And you better get it out of there quick because what will happen as soon as that first gun goes off, they put in capital controls.
Hmm.
They shut down the stock markets. This is what they do every single time. Just look it up. Even the US shut down the stock market in 1914.
One more thought here, Martin. We're anticipating these big deportation operations to take place sometime soon. What are some of the ramifications, some of the unintended consequences that might come from these deportations from an economic standpoint? Should we anticipate higher prices due to the, I guess, lessening of the cheap labor supply? I mean, what do you see down the line?
It's kind of hard to say. I don't really see it here in Florida. They seem to be more settled, elsewhere. Um, but I would say it's probably going to end up pushing up wages as we have shortages of labor to begin with. Here in Florida, you see a lot of stores signs out, help wanted, help wanted. Uh, I mean, the biggest problem with what Biden did is he basically blocked um, immigration from Europe and Asia, and took in all the dredge of the earth through South America. Um, I mean, a lot of them were Chinese that came in, Africans, Middle East. They weren't all like Mexicans. Mexicans are generally hardworking people. Um, so you got a whole bunch of different things. Europe, much worse. Europe was they let in tons of Muslims, and then you ended up with um, a religious cultural clash. In Sweden, I mean, they actually set portions of the city and said Shira law works here. They didn't assimilate. It's not like I'm going there to be part of something. They went there to bring their culture with them. Um, I mean, I have friends in Germany who will not even let their 13-year-old daughter walk 2 blocks to a bus stop anymore. Um, I mean, over 1,000 girls were raped on New Year's Eve, and the government said, "Don't use the word rape, just use assault." Um, they try to hide it.
Mhm.
Um,
And speaking of
Austria,
Florida,
same thing.
yeah, and speaking of Florida, you are starting to see these severe weather events. In the case of Florida, you had these massive hurricanes come in. I think Tampa was one of the recipients of it. And then you have the LA wildfires on the West Coast side. I want to ask you, with all these recent anomalies or outliers, if you can call them that, what does this do? What is there a hidden impact on the real estate market by way of the insurance companies? The insurance companies are sure to jack up the rates for all these coastal areas. What impact will that eventually ticker down to real estate? Would this incentivize people to move out of the coast and into more inland territories?
No, not really. The practically zero impact on insurance companies
Mm,
because the first storm was a storm surge, so it was a flood.
hmm
All right, that's FEMA. Sorry, that's flood insurance. Uh, Homeowners, all that stuff, not covered for floods. Uh, so I don't know anybody here other than going to FEMA. Um, that was it. So insurance companies, I don't think got any kind of a real hit here in Florida from this stuff. The second one with the hurricane was winds, nothing really big, not a big deal. I didn't have any damage. I don't see anything around me that did. Um, Now, California, uh, look, Newsom let the reservoir run dry. On top of that, State Farm petitioned to raise its rates before the fires. He denied it, so they canceled policies just, a couple months before all the fires.
hmm
Um, their insurance companies would be on the line with a fire issue rather than a flood. Um, but look, insurance companies, to me, they're just fraud. Um, Throughout my life, I've never had an insurance company ever pay what they were supposed to pay ever. um, I had a car at the top of a tree and a storm broke up in New Jersey. Went in, hit the car. The car was like 3 weeks old. I took it to the dealer. They sent it to Bordentown Auto Body. Bordentown Auto Body burns down with it. Oh, that's two separate deductibles. Why? The car's gone. Well, the tree first hit it, and then the second one is a fire. I mean, my mother's house, the pipes froze. They sent an investigator to see if she was there because there's a little clause in the homeowner's
Mm.
policy. If you're not there, they don't have to cover it. She was staying at my sister's house. Cost me 50 grand to fix my mother's house. Zero. I've never, I mean, I swear if I die, they're going to say it's not me, it's a clone. Um, I know one guy was paying $40,000 a year for insurance and zero, absolute zero. No, don't cover that. Don't cover this. That's FEMA for. I self insure as I'm not going to pay 40 some $1,000s a year in insurance when they're never going to pay anyhow. And he basically says, "You're right. Just save the money, put it in the bank, and I figured if I've been here for 8 years, I paid enough, saved enough, and that I could rebuild the house."
I see. Well, okay. This has been a fascinating discussion as always, Marty. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for your time. For people who want to hear and see more of you, where can they find you?
Go to armstrongeconomics.com. We don't sell advertising, so you have to keep pushing off things to read or whatever. And you don't have to put in your email or anything like that. It's a public service. It's open for everybody. And we're not blocked anywhere in the world. We got, you can see it in China, you can see it in Russia, you can see it everywhere because everybody knows pretty much It's a computer, and you're not going to find on page 3, by the way, overthrow your government.
Fantastic. We'll have the links to your website down below, so be sure to check it out, guys. If you got value out of this video, be sure to give us a like and comment. Go, Marty, go in the comments section. If you disagreed with anything we talked about, do let me know. I do read the comments, and I'm always interested to get your takes here, guys. Remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss another interview just like this. And then check us out on Substack to get early access and ad-free versions of all of my content, as well as uncensored versions for the videos that warrant it. And so with all that said, I thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye, y'all.